you came highly recommended. Mike S. And I don't know a lot about Mike's story. I've heard him share in meetings. I've always thought highly of what I heard from him in the program, and I know from what I hear from him sharing in meetings, he believes in this program. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to Mike S. from 5 Points. 5 Points.
Okay. Sure is good to be here. I'm Mike, alcoholic.
Amen.
I had some of this good cake and ice cream, and I tell you, it's hearing about all those years of people getting like total of over 50 years sobriety really says a lot about this group. Reminds me of a joke that I heard one time. It was about a guy who's doing his first solo parachute jump. And not talking about one of them tandem deals where he's strapped to somebody's back. He's doing it by himself. So he's done his training, as we do here. And the moment of reckoning, he was pushed out of the plane and he's falling. And he reaches terminal velocity, which is 200 and something miles an hour. You can't go no faster than that. And his training kicks in, of course, and he pulls the ripcord. And nothing happens. Well, he's got problems. He's got problems, but we have solution because we call it a reserve chute. So he doesn't panic, just like we don't panic when we go through crisis here in AA. You know, we need to get some phone numbers and go to us a meeting and get my prayers for the daily basis. I don't let it get me all frazzled. He didn't either, so he pulled the reserve chute, and now nothing happened. We got real problems now. Now suspend disbelief just for a moment, that he passes somebody going the other way just as fast. And they're able to have a conversation, a momentary conversation as they pass. You got to suspend disbelief. This couldn't really happen. But let's just say it did. And they pass and they have a moment of conversation, and he says, "Hey man, you know anything about parachutes?" And the dude going the other way says, "No, man. Do you know anything about lighting gas stoves?" Well, that's a little funny joke. And I don't know anything about parachutes, and I don't know anything about lighting gas stoves. But what I do know about is what I've been asked to come here and talk about. And I think that I know about it just as much as everybody in here knows about it, especially here in all those years of sobriety. We know about how to stay sober. More importantly, is talking about staying sober and what it's like outside the ditch, instead of describing the walls of the ditch and how I got in the ditch and how I couldn't ever get out of the ditch. Because most speaker meetings, that's what you hear. Yeah. People give you 55 minutes, so let's get drunk, let's get high, bragging on, no, I smoked up 2 houses and 3 businesses and 4 families, and I drank up this and that. And it's almost like this competition. I've seen it in meetings. You know, the next guy's got to be worse than the next guy. You're going, wow, man, you know, can we break out of this cycle? And the way to break out of the cycle is never get in it. You know, Bill W. was quoted as saying back when he could control the meetings a long time ago, when he was the boss, and thank goodness for it. He said, there was little story of drink stories in those days. This comes out of AA Comes of Age. There was very little talk of drinking stories in the meetings in those days. I'm trying to remember it exactly. He said, frankly, it was nobody's business, and it was between you and your sponsor. We made everybody share about recovery, and in doing so, we gave ourselves something to live up to. All right. Now, I liked that. It don't matter who said it. I still would have liked it. Because, see, it is about experience, strength, and hope, not war stories, weakness, and despair. And I do need something to live up to. You know, and I heard about, and it is about the message, not the mess. And I heard that some days of the week at this group we study the traditions. Some days we study the book. And I got to thinking about the tradition. And when they were reading the tradition, I got to thinking about tradition 5 and that little tiny little word in there, it's. It says, a meeting has a primary purpose to carry its message. Now, we know why it says it's because it's right after the story about tradition 4 where this place, they built a building with 3 floors and they was going to have relationship counseling on one floor and financial advising on another, and they had 61 rules and they had it on the wall. And Bill and Bob said, I don't know about all that, but we're going to let you do your deal because it's autonomous. We give you the right to be wrong. And then after they all got drunk, they sent him a napkin, Rule 62, don't take yourself so seriously. The reason I'm telling the story is because 5 obviously says it's, but what it should say is this. Because what we're supposed to be doing is carrying this message out of the book. Now I can tell you, and I can show you, and I'm sure you know where to go. I could go to a meeting where its message ain't this message. They talking about everything but this message. But that's its message. So it's up to each individual member, myself included, to go where I get fed. To go where this message is talked about, not just its message. To go where the message of staying out of the ditch is talked about, not describing the inside of the ditch. Giving myself something to live up to rather than something to live down to. Now with that comes a little responsibility, doesn't it? Which, my observation over the years, most alcoholics don't like the idea of responsibility. Because it's much easier to give myself something to live down to and talk down about myself. Nobody's going to expect nothing from somebody that does that. The challenge that I know that we can rise to is hidden on page 21, isn't it? And I think about Belton when I think about this. If y'all know Belton, he used to come to Jaffe in the late 80s and early 90s and still comes around, but that's when I was first indoctrinated with the Beltonisms. Right? What old Belton say? He said, I'm a real alcoholic. Now also he said he slept in portalettes and drank Vitalis hair tonic, and I have to say that that's a if for me, or what do you say? That's a yet. That is a yet for me. But let's talk about that real alcoholic that he used to say. In page 21, it describes me. So I said, what about the real alcoholic? This is a guy that's been baffling you, more or less always insanely drunk. And we go through, and if you've been to enough meetings, you know, when people talk about page 21 and the real alcoholic, we tend to dwell on all the negativity on that page. But I'm here to say, and invite you to see, then there's a lot of sobriety here, so you've probably already seen this, but what my observation of that page is it's got more good about us than bad. I want to investigate that because, see, I need not just to give myself something to live up to, I need somebody to give me some hope so I can latch on to the idea that maybe I have what it takes. Now I'm going to use that phrase, have what it takes, and I'm going to set it over here because I'm going to come back to it in a minute. Do I have what it takes? Now, page 21, he talks about all kinds of good stuff. We don't have to open the book or anything, but you'll know it's there. Special skills and abilities. He could be one of the finest fellows in the world. Great outlook for family and friends. The word genius is used. Positive genius is used. In another part of the book, it talks about we're fast thinking and imaginative. 2 of us do the work of 5 in employers. All those things sound like, hey, you know, we got it going on. And I do know that having that addiction on my back, although at the same time to some people around me maintaining some semblance of normal, I didn't really know he had it that bad. And then you take that weight off my shoulders, what can happen? The sky can be the limit, don't it? The sleeper can awaken, can he? So the hope is hidden on page 21 that there is good things about me. Because when I got here, Man, I started hearing the mantra in the rooms, we're supposed to want to drink and can't think. My mind's this terrible place to go. And I was like, oh man, and everything I touch turns to, not the Midas touch, right? Turns to something else. And I'm like, man, and this admitting that I'm an alcoholic is like this scarlet letter on my head, emblazoned. And I got to live that way the rest of my life. Man, I'm so broken. My mind is broken. I can't think, I was down on myself. I remember early on coming to grips with the reality of that. Because I didn't want to be that. Our book talks about it. The illusion that I want to be like other people needed to be smashed. It says the illusion, then it says a delusion, doesn't it? The delusion. And those two words are very purposefully used, in my opinion, because an illusion is a false representation of reality, I don't know that I can be faulted for having that illusion. But when I become deluded is when I have that illusion, but I start amassing evidence to the contrary. That's what a delusion is. It's an illusion with evidence to the contrary. And then if I still believe the illusion after all that evidence, I'm deluded. I am really crazy then, because I have racked up some instances in my life that proves that I am not like those people. It proves that they're the ones that's going to bed and I'm up still at night. I got 3 beers left, can't even enjoy them because I'm thinking, well, where am I going to get the next? Because I know that ain't enough. Do you feel me? We're talking about the craving now. I cannot predict with certainty what's going to happen once I set off the craving. But like the book talks about, these observations that it talks about on 22 would be academic and pointless if I never took the first drink. The real crux of my problem, I think is it 35, is the mental state preceding the first drink. And that's where these steps come in to help keep me from going insane and believing the lie that I can drink without harm. That's where these steps come in. Now, I remember I set off to the side the idea about, do I have what it takes? Because this isn't, a hopeful time of year. Wanted to give an uplifting message. And I also wanted to talk about a certain term that is characteristic of this time of year, the word resolve, the word resolution. It's used several times in the book. I'm going to tie it in. But this idea of do I have what it takes reminds me of an old joke by somebody that I grew up with, that I have still one actual record, a vinyl record. Believe that? I still got Sammy Davis Jr., the Candy Man, on a 45. I've got about 30 or 40 little 45s that I used to have. But I still have this record of Richard Pryor. And he was doing a monologue up on stage. And he is trying to get a job, and he's playing both people. He's playing the guy that's going to give him the job, and he's playing himself. So he's playing the guy that's sitting at the desk, looking at the resume or whatever application. And he says, Mr. Pryor, I just don't know if you're what we're looking for. I don't know if you're responsible. I don't know if you're dependable. And he switches the character. And in his best drunken voice and mannerism, he said, what do you mean I'm not dependable? For the last 5 years, I've had a $500 a day drug habit. I ain't missed a payment. Now, what does that have to do with what I'm talking about? What it has to do with, that there was something inside of him, the energy that was necessary to get the job done, to not miss a payment. Now, let's don't go into what he had to do to not miss a payment, because I actually broke in a house to get some more money to get some solid alcohol one time. The statute of limitations has run. I can say it in a meeting. And I'm a lawyer now, so it don't matter. So I can be for real. But let's talk about that energy that was within him, and let's tie that to the book and my experience. I come in here thinking I don't have what it takes. And then I hear that story and I begin to wonder, and I scratch my chin and I'm saying to myself, if I had what it took to not miss that payment, maybe if I took that energy that I had and put it in this direction, that I might could do this too. See, that's the whole reason for the story. To instill the idea, the realization that I may not have had a 5-year drug habit, maybe it wasn't $500 a day, but I did what it took to not miss that payment, meaning I got my drugs and alcohol on a daily basis. And if I put that same energy here, then I may just be successful. I'll put it in some different terms. Dr. Bob says it best in his story. He said, if I put half the zeal into this than I put out there, my Heavenly Father will not let me down. Now, zeal is an old term. We could call it energy. We could call it tenacity. We can call it stick-to-itiveness, whatever you want to call it. He's saying the same thing as Richard Pryor was saying. I had the energy to not miss a payment. If I put that in the appropriate direction, ain't no way I can fail. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, it talks about in the agnostics, with this attitude, you cannot fail. But what it takes is a combination, to me, of two things. Let me set that aside for a second and talk about just a tad about a couple of things from my childhood which have value to the discussion of recovery. I mean, I've heard talks where people are talking about, I'm from Nantucket, my dad had a sailboat. That ain't got nothing to do with AA. But what about my childhood might have something to do with what we deal with what I deal with? Two things. One, and I have to mention Dr. Bob again because it's in his story, I'm an only child. And in Dr. Bob's story, he talks about he was an only child, and it engendered the selfishness that played such an integral part in bringing about his alcoholism. So I was an only child, so I came by my selfishness, honestly, because the world did revolve around me. Both parents doted over me. So in essence, I had a skewed vision of reality. I didn't want for nothing. I didn't. Everything revolved around me, and you learned to manipulate at an early age. But I can't just say, oh, I'm an only child, I'm just going to be selfish all my life. No, I acknowledge that it's there, just like I acknowledge that I'm an alcoholic. But it's what am I going to do now? What else about my childhood? This particular instance shows how I can be sort of have an addictive personality even before I took a drink. There was these stickers that I used to collect. They were called Wacky Pack stickers. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of them, but it don't matter what the name of the sticker is. It could have been football stickers or race car stickers or race car cards or whatever. At the bottom right-hand corner, I don't care what kind of cards or stickers you collected, at the bottom right-hand corner, it always said 57 of 200. There was a set of them things. And then the next year, they'd come out with a new set. That's how they keep the kids hooked. And I remember having them Wacky Pack stickers and seeing that number at the bottom, and I would have them laid out. I was absolutely obsessed about getting the entire set. I would have 20 duplicates over here. I would go into the store. I had cavities in my chew with so much top bubble gum getting them stickers. I had to have the whole set. I was absolutely obsessed. I was addicted. And then when I would get the set, I'd be happy for a minute. I'd put a rubber band around it, and I'm off to the next set. Take care. It's good to see you, sir. I was on to the next set. See, so that addictive personality that I had nothing to do with alcohol. But it was inside of me from an early age. That lets me know I had the propensity for this. And I was 5 or 6 years old? You know, and there may be something to the idea of genetics or DNA or whatever they talk about. You know, but my parents didn't smoke or drink. He'd have a 6-pack of Pabst Blue Ribbon in the bottom of that refrigerator. It'd stay there for a year. But I will tell you this, the reason that has bearing on this story is because of something it says in the first sentence of the first step in the 12 and 12. And it's one of the most integral, crucial things that I don't, if it's me or anybody else that's going to get this program. It says, I had to admit that glass in hand, I warped my mind into such a state of destructive drinking that only an act of providence could remove it. It said, I did it. They didn't do it. She didn't do it. My parents didn't give me the DNA that did it. It said, you got to own it. That's what that page told me. It said, you got to own it. And I think that's a major part of being able to come to grips with that scarlet letter, so to speak. It's not really a scarlet letter. It's actually the greatest gift I've ever had, because it enabled me to see the truth. It enabled me to see that the world is able to be dealt with in a constructive manner. And I got a way of life in these steps to deal with any problems. So I feel sorry for some of them folks out there. They don't even got no steps. What do? I don't know what they do. I can't concern myself with what they do. I have to concern myself with what I do. And what I have to do on a daily basis is continue to do this. You know, and after the years go on, and you know, some of y'all have known me for a little while, so we've all been taking this journey for a long time. You know, you've heard all the topics, you've heard all the big book studies, you know what's on every page, and complacency can set in. I've seen it. I've observed it. I've experienced it. You know, and hell, I may not need but one meeting a week, but I go to 14 because I don't know which one that is. I actually heard a guy named Happy Jack that used to come to meetings. It was, I think he died in the mid-90s, if I'm not mistaken. He had throat cancer, but he died sober, and he used to say that. I don't need but one meeting a week, but I go to 14 because I don't know which one that is. Meaning the story behind the statement is, this is the center of my wagon wheel, not some spoke on it. And I may not hear some nugget of knowledge. Man, I ain't never heard that before. I ain't never seen that page. You won't hear me saying that. I've seen every page. And I do know what's on it. But sometimes the most valuable things come from a newcomer, right? Sometimes the newcomer will say something. And I'll say, oh, that's that one meeting in that 14. That was the one. But I would have missed it. I would have missed it. So, what does it take? We talked about a combination of things. For me, and I set it over to the side, that term, take care, Peter. Got to make it to Bessemer, baby. Bessemer's at 8. That's where Kenneth was going. Let's all go. Come on. I said enough. Y'all ain't studying me. We've had the ice cream. We go over there and watch Carla smoke. What? You know you got to do it. You know you got to do it. Sit right next to her, hoping it rub off by osmosis. No. What an order. I can't go through with it. Okay, I'm just going to throw that out there. It takes a lot to get banned from Jaffe. I could tell you the story. Funny story. I ain't gonna tell it. I ain't gonna tell it. But you can't make some of this shit up. Okay. The terms that I was talking about resolved, resolution. I said it over here. I'm going to bring it back out. We're going to talk about it. For me, it reminds me of the 5 different types of alcoholics that he talks about in the doctor's opinion. They always going on the wagon for keeps. They make many resolutions, but never a decision. You know, and it reminds me of Bill's story. Go, where had been my high resolve? I seem to be able to handle all these other things, but this time I meant business, and even my wife could see it. Next sentence. Shortly afterward, I came home drunk. So it's got to be a little bit more than just a resolve. The doctor knew it. He said it. many resolutions, but never a decision. Something about the combination of a resolution and a decision does more than just a resolution. And why am I talking about that? Because, hell, I've sang the Alcoholics National Anthem. I'll never do it again. I bet you everybody in here sang that song. Sang the Alcoholics National Anthem. I'll never do it again. And I drank again after that. But what is this resolution plus a decision? I want to talk about that word decision. And it's my belief system. I'm up here telling some of my ways of seeing things. But you notice that I hadn't talked not once about being in the ditch, war stories, drinking, bragging about drinking. It has absolutely zero value. Especially in a speaker meeting, right? I mean, one-on-one, if you're working with a newcomer and you want him to know that you drank like it, okay. But we quickly move on to the steps, don't we? Because we talk about, But let's talk about in a speaker meeting, what does it do? Well, it's completely divisive. Because if I say one substance and you did another, shut me down. If I say I did it in a different part of town and you did, shut me down. If I just didn't do as much as somebody else did, shut me down. The next thing you know, everybody in the room has shut you down and they're thinking about 805. They ain't even thinking about what anybody's saying. So that's why I really don't get into war stories. I will say that I have sang that Alcoholic and Addicts National Anthem. I've used behind it. I shudder to think some of the things I may have been observed. Sometimes it's hard to say I don't regret the past. I have used against my will. I've experienced the phenomenon of craving. But aside from that, we're talking about resolution plus a decision. And what is a decision? We know that a decision by itself, how much does, in step 3 they ask us to make a decision. To turn my will over to God, to the care and direction of God. Talk about step 3. Some of the mechanics of step 3 that's rarely talked about and unknown by most, as we understood him, was added in there because of a big battle between Bill and Fitzmayo, who's the preacher's son at the end of Agnostics, and Whiskey and Milkman Jim and Hank P., who wrote Employers. They were two atheists, and they didn't want God in the book at all. And every time they mentioned God in the meetings, they was raising hell, and they was having a big problem. He was trying to write the book. And he said, Hank, Jim, if I put as we understood him in step 3 and step 11, will y'all shut up and let me finish writing this book? And they said, okay. That's why it's there. To stop a fight. I would have done just fine with it saying just God. And so was he. Let's talk about what else isn't there. Let's talk about what is there and why, as we understood it. Let's talk about what isn't there that has direct bearing to what I was talking about, a resolution and a decision and its implications. When he wrote the book, and you'll know on page 13 that it's true, because he said, I turned my will and my life over to the care and direction of my newfound friend. Care and direction, he used the word. And in step 3, when he wrote step 3, it said care and direction. But then a non-alcoholic psychiatrist, Harry T. Booth, said, hey man, I know y'all want to sell more books. This is in AA Comes of Age. Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers as well are the 2 history books that I highly recommend. These stories are there. He said, hey man, I know y'all want to sell a lot of books. You got to get word of that word direction, man, because ain't no alcoholic likes to hear that word. You got to change the word direction to suggestion, man. You ain't going to get nobody that's going to want to hear none of that. So through that pressure, he took the word direction out of the 3rd step. Now, what did that do? What that did was caused many alcoholics their lives. Because when it just says turn it over to God, I expect God to do it all. I don't have any responsibility at all. I said, Big G, I'm starving. I want you to shove an Oscar Mayer through the keyhole. I just locked myself in a closet. I want you to shove an Oscar Mayer through the keyhole. Big G, do it all. When I have that word direction, it gives me a responsibility. And that's why I talked about the doctor saying a resolution and a decision. Care and direction in the original third step come from the prayer, thy rod and thy staff that comfort me. Protection and direction. Meaning, faith without works is dead. Meaning, you can ask God to do it all day long, but unless I'm willing to do some footwork, ain't nothing going to happen. That's the whole reason I'm telling the story about my experience, but I used the step 3 as a vehicle to get the point across. You see, the reason they took direction out was a monetary reason. Talking about tradition 6 being diverted. Oh my gosh. They came to their senses later, but the word had already been removed. And I'm not expecting everybody to buy what I'm saying about the detrimental effects of that word being removed. I'm asking you to try to, hear what I'm saying about I play a part in my recovery. The word direction is important. If I don't follow any directions or do anything, I can sit with my legs crossed and pray to God all day long. I'm fixing to get drunk. I know this for a fact. I've done it. Let's talk about what God that I pray to. I do remember as a child, my parents made me go to church. And I guess I was a mischievous kid. Maybe I had ADD before there was even ADD. They're giving kids all kinds of dope now to pay attention. My dad just whipped my ass and said, son, pay attention. You ain't bringing no bad grades no more. Oh, yes, sir. That was the best ADD medicine I ever had. That razor strap downstairs next to the workbench. Straighten me up. But anyway, talking about paying attention. Talking about God in my childhood. Paying attention in church. I almost lost where I was going. But now I'm back. I'm back in the pew. Miserable. Listening to them sing, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves. I had to be still. Don't move, Mike. Whack! And then I'm hearing this. You do this, you're going to hell. No, just to think it was to do it. Here's Sam. He goes, okay, I'll just do it till I need glasses. I ain't going to explain what that means, but I thought that was funny when he did that. But really, though, let's take a look at it. To think it was to do it, you're already going to hell. Full on Old Testament, right? Wrath of God shit. If you do wrong, they're going to burn you to a crisp or drown you like Noah. And for me, alcoholics, we don't sit well with threats. Do this or else. I'm going to say, I'm doing it. We're very rebellious people. It could be good, but it can also be a detriment. Even Bill in his story, and this is my experience, fear sobered me for a bit. Threats sober me for a bit. What I need for longevity is some positiveness. This truly is a red letter program, and I can say this because of where we are, it's because of the time of year. It's truly a red letter program because the New Testament talks about living right because of the good things you get, not because of threats. It talks about peace and love and helping folks and getting the benefits. It didn't say nothing about burning to a stake or drowning. The reason this program works is because the reason it works for me. And the statement holds, what brought me here is not going to be what keeps me here. What brought me here was to get her back, or get the license back, or they fixing to kick me out, or my dad's going to make me go into this and do this, or they going to go, maybe I'll go to jail or something. But you come to AA, if you just stop drinking, there's going to be some improvement. There's going to be a drastic reduction in the number of times I go to jail if I stop drinking. Now that ain't got nothing to do with whether I'm happy or not. There's going to be a modicum of improvement. You're going to get the license back. She's going to talk to you again. And many alcoholics, I've observed this, they think, wow, the job is done. And they don't realize that I've got to pay those insurance premiums when there ain't a scratch on the car. That I got to keep coming back even when I don't think I need to. And they think that the cessation of these problems is what I'm searching for here, and they stop trying. Because who really wants to care to admit complete defeat? And also, who really cares to do a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things within me that had been blocking me, which ties right back to the decision, doesn't it? Because that's on, is that on 64? Our decision, although vital and crucial, will have little or no permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things that have been blocking me. Meaning, a decision don't mean nothing unless I do something. And that's why I was talking about what the doctor said, making many resolutions but never a decision. And now I'm talking about that word decision and what it implies. Because a decision by itself, I could sit at the breakfast table every single morning, eat me a brand new bowl of Wheaties, looking at the box. It's got Kenneth on it, running a marathon, right? And I'm going to sit there and eat my Wheaties, and I'm going to decide to go to California. And I'm going to do it 100 days in a row. I'm going to eat my Wheaties, and I'm going to sit there and decide to go to California. But the problem is, I'm still sitting at the breakfast table. I ain't going nowhere. And I've decided with every fiber of my being to go to California. I've decided to quit drinking, but I didn't do nothing. I sat there eating my Wheaties. The only way I'm going to get to California is to actually get in the car, go get me some gas, pack my shit, and drive there. Then I will find that that decision, backed up with some action, has given me the result. You know, I think about it, and Fred said it best in his story. And this was on 42, and this is my experience. He said, the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, the curious feeling that the drink problem had been removed came strongly, as it in fact proved to be. Let's take a look at that. What is he saying? He's saying the same thing as I said when I'm sitting there with these extra 5 pounds I gained over the Christmas holidays, and I'm on 2 a.m. watching the TV, and P90X or Insanity comes on the TV, and they talking about a 6 CD set. And I said, I'm going to dial the 1-800 number. And I call it, and I feel like I lost 3 pounds just by calling the number. Man, I made a decision. I'm going to go get me them CDs, man. The curious feeling that the weight problem had been removed came strongly when I hung up the phone. And then he said, as it in fact proved to be. Hold on a minute. Now, something happened between the curious feeling and the as it in fact proved to be. You can put them in the same sentence, feelings and proof in the same sentence, but that's not where they live. And here's the phrase to remember. Feelings aren't facts. The proof is in the process. Feelings aren't facts. The proof is in the process. So he had the feeling when Bill and Bob was sitting on his bed, man, yeah, it's P90X, baby. It's Insanities. Yeah, I can do this. But what made it prove was he did something. He didn't just sit in the closet and say, God, just shove an Oscar Mayer through the keyhole, I'm hungry. I guarantee you that he did something. He worked this program. He went beyond just getting off the sauce, right? Because even on 122 in the beginning of A Family Afterward, it says cessation of drinking is but a first step away from a highly strained abnormal condition. Meaning, just stopping drinking, that's just the first thing. I got to change me. And that fourth step is the great equalizer. Let me tell you something. It's easy to come in here and say, yeah, the alcohol's a problem. Yeah, she's the problem. Yeah, they the problem. But then I don't know that I could have handled them telling me to do the fourth step right up front. Because what does the fourth step say? It ain't got nothing to do with that. The alcohol's just a symptom. The bottles are just a symbol. The problem is you, bro. If they had told me that in the first meeting, I'll say, we are out of here, bro. We gonna holler at that. I am unable to even check that out. But if I come here long enough, I'm going to be open to that, because by that time I am going to have experienced what it's like to be what Bill W. called stark raving sober. Yeah, I got me a little sobriety, but what I want is some sobriety, right? So, because if I'm going to be successful, longevity, like some of these people that have picked up these big years tonight, you can bet they just ain't sat on their hands and white-knuckled it. They've put action behind that decision. They had a resolution plus a decision, and within that decision, it implies I did something. After I decided, I had the curious feeling that it was removed. That's great. And that can last different lengths of time for different people. I call it the grace period. But at some point, I got to work the steps, or I'm not going to have what it takes, even though, as Richard Pryor proved, I have what it takes. And there's no worse feeling to know that I got what it takes and refused to use it. And then I come back, done failed again. I'm talking about me. I knew better. I could have done that. Talking about Bill and his story, I looked in the mirror, cursed myself for a weakling. I don't want to go down that way. It's too easy to stay here. And time's running out. I mean, I'm just getting started. I could do this for 3 hours and half. But see, they only give us 45 minutes to talk. But you notice I hadn't talked about no war stories. What I've tried to do was tie this time of year, the resolution and the decision. What the decision implies, action. And do I have what it takes to perform all of it? But it takes this message, not just its message. Right? What I've been trying to talk about is my experience coupled with this message, because I've talked about different parts of the book, and I'm sorry if you don't like it when somebody says page numbers. You know, that's the way I got to make sense of it all. I mean, I had so much stuff jumbling around, I had to put a page number to every one of the pages so I could be able to recall like that. And so I do it automatically. It's not, I'm not trying to show off by it. But the bottom line is this. You would be surprised, and you already know this. If I got here and somebody didn't tell me somewhere something to go in that book that is this thick, I would have never found it. So that's one of the reasons I say page numbers. So newcomers that hear me, they could go check that page number, not just to check me to see if I'm lying, which I highly recommend you do, because you could hear anything in a meeting. And they used to call the big book the bullshit sifter. If it ain't in the big book and you hear it in a meeting, you don't even have to listen to it. But what the problem is, and what's so sad, is most people never even crack it. We hear something and we share it the next meeting and we sound like we've read it. I know, people really don't study the book for real. Some of the stuff I have talked about is actually studying the book and dissecting it and seeing what it means and trying to make sense of some of that archaic language in that archaic time when those people that I was nothing like, and bring it into my consciousness and see that message that I know that God had His hand in creating. Because that wasn't just some dude that wrote all that. Let's be clear. I believe God led His hand. And there's secrets within those pages, because if He had to stop and explain everything He said, it'd be 564 pages rather than 164 pages. That's why knowing the stories beneath the stories, reading the AA Comes of Age. And I'll end with one of those, just to show you what I'm talking about, make it interesting, give you something to think about. Two things that I found the most interesting of reading those, hidden within Bill's story. You may like this. He talks about the concept hit me hardest when Ebby came to see him. It melted the icy intellectual mountains in whose shadow I lived and shivered for many years. Now that sounds very poetic. But from his childhood, interestingly enough, his mother left him. The father was gone. He had to live with his grandparents, read by candlelight upstairs in his room. They called him a voracious reader. And they lived at the base of the Green Mountains, Mount Aeolus, and it had snow on it. So when he says that in the story, it melted the icy intellectual mountains in whose shadow I had lived and shivered for many years. That is his childhood. The intellectual mountain he read every day. That's all he had to do. There wasn't no internet. There wasn't no PlayStation. The icy intellectual mountains into the shadow of their house. Even though it made sense in what he was saying, it was real. Now that is a cool story. And there's one more that's just as cool to me. Knowing this history is exciting. Getting excited about it is exciting. Because now, when you hear that, you will never see icy intellectual mountains the same way again. Because you know the story underneath the surface. And here's one, the most coolest one. And I'll leave you with this because it's 8 o'clock. But I will say I didn't stop drinking at 8. That's supposed to be funny. Oh, it's 8, fellas. Y'all just smoke up the rest of them pebbles. I'm out of here. It's 8. Gotta go. Just kidding. No, but Abby came to see Bill. Now, this is a cool story because you'll know, and this is one of those where you'll never see this page the same way again. Abby came to see him. It really ties in the whole thing I was talking about, the God of my childhood and all this, and coming to grips with the new conception of God in step 2. This is really, I should have told this story. But I get sidetracked and, I'm sitting here staring at that clock. So Abby comes to see Bill, and he says in the book, you'll recall, he goes, I've got religion. I was aghast. When I'll call it crackpot. Now he's crazy. My gin will last longer than his ranting. Okay. He says, I've got religion. Here's what's not in the book. Now, this comes straight from his mouth. He told the story the night Dr. Bob died. I got the tape. Larry's probably got it. And he talks about what he said. It's also in AA Comes of Age. Abby says, I've got religion. And Bill says, what brand of religion is it? And Abby says, you're going to love this. This is the straight dope. Look at here. I didn't like my dope cut. I don't want my recovery cut. Do you feel me? Okay. He says, I've got religion. Bill says, what brand of religion is it? And Abby says, it's the religion of common sense. True story. I'm going to tie it up for you. With gold thread like Rumpelstiltskin. All right? It's the religion of common sense. Now, what is that? We're talking about the God of my childhood. Smiter. Oh, Smiter. Oh, don't burn me just to think it was to do it. The religion of common sense is I got a God that's going to forgive me for what I've done, but expects me to live differently. Care and direction. Right? But let's talk about how that's cool with the book. Fast forward, that's page 9, it becomes 10, 11, 12. 12, he talks about Winchester, how he sees the significance of his once feeling that God had removed it. But what did he say? Worldly clamors blotted it out. But now he sees it again. And what does he say on 13 that ties into what Epi said? I got religion. What brand of religion is it? It's the religion of common sense. And what does he say on 13 after he works the steps in detox? He says, my common sense had thus become uncommon. I always wondered why he said my common sense had thus become uncommon. It never made sense. I could make sense of it, but I didn't know why he said it until I heard him say it. Until I read AA Comes of Age, and the reason he said my common sense has thus become uncommon is because Abby said it's the religion of common sense. And all of a sudden it washed over Bill and it washed over me. Wait a second. My common sense is uncommon because my boy's sober and I'm not. You feel me? You will never see common sense has thus become uncommon the same way again because you know the story underneath the surface. That is cool stuff. Now I know I'm getting excited about this. I'm an egghead big book thumper. Look at here. I know it. But you know what? You would have expected nothing less. We started a group called Back to Basics so we could study the book the way we wanted, didn't we? Early 90s. Y'all stay down there with all that war stories. You ain't coming up in here. And they used to come and say, look at that's put that down mean down there. We study in the book up here. Am I lying? It's the truth. So it's exciting. Let me recap. Because they made me go to Toastmasters when I was a kid. My dad made me go to Toastmasters when I was 17 years old and sit in there with them old men with them suits to force me to learn how to public speak. And I hated him for that. He made me real Dale Carnegie every night at the dinner table. But now I love it. And let me talk about, they said, they trained me and they told me people remember two things about a talk. What somebody said in the beginning and what somebody said at the end. So you say what you're going to say, you say it, and then you tell them what you said with a recap so they can relive it all at once. That's what I've got to do, because I talked about so much stuff. What have I said? What I've talked about is the importance of that feeling that the drink problem has been removed can come strongly, but it takes my action. It takes a resolution plus a decision. That decision implies that I have to do something. I have to follow directions, the word that was removed from step 3. I have to realize that faith alone won't do it. It takes my work. And that curious feeling that the drink problem can be removed can be real and a fact. Feelings aren't facts. The proof is in the process. And during all of that, we talked about some jokes. We had some laughs. But Richard Pryor said it best. I have what it takes. We may not know about gas stoves or parachutes, but what we're here to talk about, we know about. We know the value of talking about experience, strength, and hope, not war stories, weakness, and despair. We need to give ourselves something to live up to rather than something to live down to. The time has totally gotten away from me. And I did not know what I was going to say when I got up here until about 30 seconds before. And I remembered the word resolution and a decision, and it all came together. Because it's New Year's. So resolutions are great for New Year's. But as somebody told me once, don't write checks, Mike, your ass can't cash. Will make me a big old resolution and I don't follow it up. Somebody's always going to be there. What about that you said, homie? You ain't done nothing. I've heard that enough. I would rather write a small check and do it than some big check that sounds cool and not even move a muscle. So let me tell you what my resolution is. I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing. And I'll end with something that Dr. Bob said, and this is so perfect. If I keep doing what I've been doing and keep believing what I've been believing, I believe I'll never have to drink or use again for the rest of my life. I've had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, and I'll pass.